Champ now. Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, Champ?
I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean? What I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to Miss Cass, because without her, none of this would be possible. Salute to Just Do Boxing, Prize Fighter, salute Prize, Technique, salute Technique. Salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. The World Colored Heavyweight Championship. As we continue our Black History Week inside of Black History Month. Yeah, we're going to look at the World Colored Heavyweight Championship today. Mike Grimm in the building. Salute Mike Grimm. Back in the early late 1800s, early 1900s, the black fighters weren't allowed to fight for the regular heavyweight championship, so they formed the Colored Heavyweight Championship. And it wasn't just the Colored Heavyweight Championship, it was colored championships in the other weight categories too, but heavyweight, of course, was the most popular. You know, heavyweight champion back in them days, you was the man. So yeah, we're going to focus on the World Colored Heavyweight Championship today. History of it, some fighters that had it, all of that. The World Color Heavyweight Championship. And welcome aboard to everybody. This is Thursday afternoon edition. On down to the weekend. I think we got Ephraim Jogba and Charles Martin in Vegas. The big one is next weekend. Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios. Big card. 3 championship fights. That killer, Gary Antoine Russell on there, defending his title against Andy Hariaka. And of course, we got Richardson Hitchens back in there against Oscar Duarte, defending his title. And Frank Martin returned against the guy that got into it with Keyshawn down in Norfolk. Albright. The hair Albright. Right, yeah, forgot momentarily. Okay, I'm old. I can't remember everything. But yeah, how's everybody? We're going to start out with our fight of the day, as usual. Okay? Salute. We got Prize Fighter in here from the STN Network. Salute, Prize. Good to see you today. Mike Rem, Technique, and Miss Cass. Salute. Let's do it. We start out with a classic fighters a day every day. So without further ado, let's get into our fight of the day. It is a quick turnaround, ain't it, Prize? Yeah, I was surprised to see Frank back in there. Okay, Frank trying to fast track his way to a title. He's on the card with 2 champions in his division too, Gary Antoine and Richardson Hitchens. So maybe Frank trying to be next up for one of them guys if everybody wins. We'll see, but yeah, you're right, Prize. It is a quick turnaround. Okay, our fight of the day today is Sam Langford versus Harry Wills. November 26, 1914. Now, they said these two fought. These are 2 pioneers, 2 black pioneers of the sport. And officially, they say they fought 18 times. But Sam Langford and Harry Wills say they fought 22 times. So I'll go with the 22 because that's what they said. But November 26, 1914 was the date of this fight. Okay? And this fight was for the World Colors Heavyweight Championship. November 26, 1914. Wills versus Langford. The Black Panther versus the Boston Bone Crusher. Okay, let's get into it. Fighters a day. The first 2 decades of the 20th century were a time of rapid evolution for the sport of boxing. Legal restrictions were being lifted around the world, and pugilism was rapidly shifting from an underground and shambolic enterprise to something more organized and mainstream. Regulations standardized, techniques evolved, and the skill sets of elite fighters became more sophisticated. At the highest levels, world-class fighters competed at least a dozen times a year. A dozen times a year, sometimes more than twice that. Frequent action forced boxers to remain in shape year-round and to hone the skills that only constant training could provide. Competition was fierce, and every division was stacked with talent. Every division was stacked with talent back then. 1914, ooh. Those were just 2 of the killers. Sam Langford, Harry Wills, Jack Johnson, Joe Jeanette, Sam McVeigh, Jim Johnson. Unlike most other professional sports of that time, boxing, at least ostensibly, was racially integrated. But many white fighters refused to face non-white opponents. while many venues barred integrated fights. Thus, a great number of talented fighters were unfairly locked out from title contention. In 1908, Jack Johnson finally broke through, capturing the heavyweight title of the world from Tommy Burns. But guess what? After becoming champion, Jack Johnson continued to reinforce the color bar, defending exclusively against white opponents. Until finally in 1913, near the end of his reign, he had a draw against another black fighter battling Jim Johnson in Paris. Yeah, that's Jack Johnson when he took the title from Tommy Burns in Australia to become the first black heavyweight champion of the world. Yeah, he was a beast technique. Sam Langford, the Boston Bone Crusher, came all the way from lightweight to heavyweight, and his average weight was like 150, 160, and the heavyweights were still avoiding him, giving up 30, 40 pounds, and they were still avoiding him. A beast, yeah, with a capital B. And so, during Jack Johnson's time at the top, talented black heavyweights plied their trade, but never competed for the world championship. Instead, facing off against each other numerous times and largely dominating every other contender willing to take them on. Sam McVay and Joe Jeanette were two dangerous talents who would have been successful in almost any subsequent era. Incidentally, it was Jeanette who later openly criticized Jack Johnson, stating that Jack forgot about his old friends as he became champion and drew the color line against his own people. That's what Joe Jeanette said about Jack Johnson. So he forgot us. He was going through the same thing. Jack Johnson used to be the colored heavyweight champion. But then when he got the world heavyweight championship, he forgot where he came from. Drew the color line. Okay. But even more dangerous than Jeanette and McVay was the great Sam Langford, a 5'7" fire plug who fought for the world welterweight title in 1904 and carried his power up through the ranks all the way to heavyweight, where he routinely knocked silly men much bigger than himself. That is, when he wasn't boxing their ears off. During his prime, Sam Langford's power in the ring skills, including clever footwork, fast hands, and potent combination punching, were virtually unequaled at that time. From lightweight all the way up to heavyweight, carried his power with him. By 1914, Sam Langford had been the top heavyweight contender for some time, not to mention the holder of the unofficial Colored World Heavyweight Championship, a sort of consolation prize for not getting a shot at the real title. Now, despite many public challenges, Sam just could not convince Jack Johnson to face him. Now, it should be noted that a Johnson versus Langford duel did take place prior to the Galveston Giant winning the world regular title, which was a 15-round fight in 1906, with Johnson enjoying a 30-pound weight advantage, one with little difficulty. But Jack was not inclined to give Langford a rematch. The fact he later declared Sam to be the toughest little son of a bitch that ever lived gives us a clear reason as to why he wouldn't give Sam Langford a rematch. Jack wanted to keep his heavyweight title. Here's him and Sam. In May of 1914, Langford fought to a newspaper draw against an up-and-coming young contender from New Orleans named Harry Wills, with some correspondents going to fight for the younger man. Now, Wills stood just over 6'2" and weighed around 210 pounds, making him one of the larger contenders of the era. Yeah, 210 was big back then because the average heavyweight was like 190, somewhere around in there. So Harry Wills was 6'2", 210. That was considered big for that era. At the time, he had only 17 pro fights on his record, but he still managed to more to hold his own against the highly regarded Sam Langford. Little did anyone know, but that was only the first of many times Langford versus Wills would be at the top of a fight card. Officially 18 times, but both Sam and Harry Wills said they fought 22 times. By November, Wills had emerged as a serious contender, one that even Jack Johnson had to take notice of. The Black Panther follows his draw against Langford with another draw, one that many thought he also deserved to win, this time against the great Joe Jeanette, before racking up 8 straight victories through October. And so the time was right for another showdown with the Boston Bone Crusher. If Johnson wouldn't give Langford a rematch, Sam was happy to oblige Harry, and thus Langford vs. Wills 2 for the World Colored Heavyweight Championship was set for Vernon, California. There's a shot of the Black Panther, Harry Wills, right there. And by this point, the 31-year-old Sam Langford boasted a record of 109 wins, 10 losses, 29 draws, with 65 knockouts, having faced and defeated nearly every formidable challenger from lightweight to heavyweight. There was no style he had not seen, no challenge he hadn't surmounted. But the young contender from Louisiana still enjoyed those significant advantages in age, size, strength, and maybe even power. And while he lacked the skills of his more experienced foe, he was growing into a fine boxer in his own right, Harry Wills. And so in front of a large crowd, Wills sought to impress those advantages as quickly as possible, taking the fight to the older and smaller man, and dominating him, dropping Sam 4 times in the first 2 rounds. At some point during the one-sided action, Langford hurt his ankle, which hobbled him through the first half of the fight. Yet Wills dropped him 4 times in the first couple rounds. But the Boston Bone Crusher was nothing if not resilient, and he rebounded to score a knockdown of his own, the fight settling into a brutal battle of attrition. Straight punches from the long arms of the Black Panther made closing the gap difficult for Langford. But as the struggle entered the 12th round, Langford found his ankle loosening up and his footwork and balance improving as a result. The next 2 rounds belonged to Langford, as he outmaneuvered and battered the larger man with heavy shots. Reports of the manner in which Langford vs. Wills 2 violently ended in round 14 are somewhat conflicting. An account in the Indianapolis Star newspaper states that Sam continued wearing Wills down, and a combination puncher, punctuated by a left hook, dropped Harry for the count. But in a 1953 interview, Wills himself would claim to have been in control of the round, backing his foe into a corner when the hook arrived and turned his day into night. Yeah, Sam got him up out of there. Thomas Hill. What's up, T. Hill? In the building. Salute. Sam Langford and Harry Wills is the fight of the day. We're concluding that. Yeah. This was their second matchup of 18 officially. They said they fought 22 times. Sam stopped them in the 14th round. I think it was scheduled for like 20. Yeah. Conflicting ways of how it happened, but either way, what is clear is that Wills was ahead on the scorecards of the scheduled 20-round fight, and Langford pulled the victory out of the jaws of defeat with his power, tenacity, and strategic mind. An editorial from the Los Angeles Herald the following day argued that Wills was too green for such a monumental challenge, though Langford's damaged eye and ankle might have begged to differ. Not to mention the fact Wills had scored more than one knockdown on the great Boston Bone Crusher. They put him down 4 times, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Yeah, that's just Jack Johnson when Jess Willard ended his reign right there, yeah. Now, soon after Sam was briefly given consideration as an opponent for the world title, but the fight never happened. And then Jack Johnson's championship reign came to an end in April 1915 when he fell to Jess Willard in Cuba. Yeah, that's that fight right there. In the same month, Sam Langford lost his colored title to Joe Jeanette. And while he remained a formidable challenger for any boxer, his prime had clearly passed. But amazingly, he would fight on for another full decade. Reportedly, Jack Dempsey, who became the champion soon after, did all he could to avoid facing Langford. And years later, Dempsey candidly stated that he was afraid of Sam Langford. And had they fought, Langford probably would have knocked me out. Jack Dempsey. For his part, Harry Wills continued to improve. He lost for the final time in his career to Langford in February of 1916. Final time in their last fight to Langford in February of 1916 of their 22 fights that they said they had. Officially 18. But from that setback until October 1926, Wills compiled an incredible record of 58 wins, just 2 losses with 3 draws and 34 knockouts. And the 2 defeats being a fluke injury stoppage and a disqualification that was rematched 4 days later. Not 4 months, 4 days later, he got his revenge in the rematch. His only 2 losses were a disqualification and injury after he fought Langford from 1916 to 1926. 63 fights, only 2 losses, an injury and a disqualification. And he revenged the disqualification 4 days later. Okay. That 10-year run included 11 victories over, some more victories over Langford, as well as wins against an all-star roster of heavyweight talent, including Sam McVeigh, Denver Ed Martin, Jeff Clark, Fred Fulton, Gunbo Smith, Kid Norfolk, Louis Firpo, and Charlie Wynard. It is him and Louis Firpo right there. Tough Argentinian fighter there, Louis Firpo. That's Harry Wills. Harry Wills won that fight in 1926. During this time, Wills was arguably the best heavyweight in the world, and a showdown with heavyweight king Dempsey was discussed and considered on numerous occasions, but never came to pass. Based on his performances during his prime, one can argue that the Black Panther might have reigned as heavyweight champion for many years, had the chance arisen. He never got the opportunity. Alas, Harry Wills will instead be remembered alongside his greatest rival, Sam Langford, as one of the finest fighters in all of boxing history to never win a world title. Harry Wills and Sam Langford. Fight of the day. There they are. Right there. Okay. BBO Sports TV in the building. Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. from the Sports Talk Network. Got the gang in there with him on D Free Prize Fighter on Monday through Thursday. Like I said, we're trying to get BBO Monday through Saturday at 8. Old man like me can do 5 days. BBO, yeah, he can do 6 days. Salute, BBO. How you doing today, my brother? All right. The World Colored Heavyweight Championship now. Okay. All right. We got 2 members of the Sports Talk Network in the building today. Prize Fighter and BBO. We got Thomas Hill. We got Mike Grimm, Technique, Just Do, and Miss Cass, along with Prize Fighter and BBO Sports TV. Okay, let's get to the world. We're just going to do history of it and, World Colored Heavyweight Championship today. This is Black History Week on Cass Sports. In boxing, Black Boxing History Week, since it's Black History Month. Tomorrow, we're going to look at some Black boxing pioneers, like Thomas Molyneux. He won his title in slavery. Slaves would fight and go around to the different plantations and fight the best fighter on those plantations. And your master and family would bet money. And after the master and family won enough money, certain amount of money on the slave, he would get their freedom. They would get their freedom. And Thomas Molyneux got his freedom that way. Fought his way to freedom. Yeah. And then he went abroad. He went overseas, because he probably would have wound up on some other plantations. He got the hell out of the United States. He moved to Europe. Brother would have to win his freedom all over again. Thomas said, oh no. But we're going to look at him tomorrow, Bill Richmond, some of the old master. Let's look at Sam Langford, Harry Wills, some of the Black pioneers, about 8 or 9 of them tomorrow. Little brief 10-minute talks on each. That's going to be the profile for this week. Black boxing pioneers, fought around the late 1800s, early 1900s. But now, the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. How's everybody is thirsty. And at the end, I think we got a little talk about Ike Williams today, too. He fought like around the 40s, 50s. The mob kept him away from a title for a minute because Ike wouldn't cooperate with him. The mob ran boxing, had a stranglehold on it back then. If they couldn't control the fighter, they would still get you because they had control of the judges. They told Ike if he didn't take the dive and do what they said, then he could win 12, however many rounds. He said he could win by shutout. He still wasn't getting the decision. And he didn't because he wouldn't play ball. So the Mafia had a stranglehold. Like I said, if they couldn't get the fighter, they had the judges. So he finally did get a title, though, but we're going to talk about him later in the show after the World Colors Heavyweight Championship. Big show today, okay? The World Colors Heavyweight Championship was a professional boxing title contested exclusively among Black heavyweight fighters from 1876 to 1937. Functioning as a segregated alternative amid racial barriers that excluded non-whites from the unified world heavyweight ground until Jack Johnson's 1908 victory. But remember, Jack Johnson the World Colored Heavyweight Championship was still in effect because Jack Johnson, who used to hold the World Colored Heavyweight title, once he won the regular title, he wouldn't fight Black fighters either. So yeah, they still only had the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. In combat sports, it recognized top Black contenders like Peter Jackson and Sam Langford, who dominated despite being denied fights against white champions due to prevailing segregational norms. The title's persistence for over 6 decades underscored its role as a mechanism of racial demarcation, with a symbolic existence often prioritized by white audiences over the actual successions of its 28 recognized holders. Okay, 28 actual champions had this title over the years, from 1876 to 1937, like 61 years. This thing went on for the World Colors Heavyweight Championship. It finally ended when Joe Louis became champion in 1937. When Joe Louis came along, they seen dollar signs. They was like, let that Black man fight for the title. Everybody saw dollar signs. But that's when Then the World Color Heavyweight Championship went out of existence then. Now, Jack Johnson claimed the Colored Championship in 1903 before shattering the heavyweight color line by defeating Tommy Burns. Yet, the parallel title endured post-1908 as Black fighters continued to defend it separately, reflecting ongoing resistance to full integration. Notable champions included Perry Wills and Larry Gaines, whose reigns highlighted the talent pool barred for mainstream contention, while the championship's demise aligned with Joe Louis's 1937 capture of the World Heavyweight title, rendering the segregated version obsolete. This era exposed the causal interplay of empirical athletic prowess against institutionalized exclusion, with Black heavyweights forging parallel legacies that prefigured broader desegregation in boxing. Okay, now historical context of racial segregation in boxing. Historical context of it. That's Jack Johnson. That's the Boston Strong Boy. John L. Sullivan on the left. He got older and retired then. Yeah, that's them two meeting up. Yeah, okay. Historical context though. Okay, Azim is back. Azim Shabazz, salute. Azim, how are you today? But the Colored Heavyweight Championship today. 1876 to 1937, it last ended when Joe Louis took the regular heavyweight title. Yeah, like I said, they had to let Joe Louis fight for it. Everybody saw dollar signs. He was so good. You know, he beat the previous 5 world champions that preceded him. Beat every one of them. Let's look into this historical context. The color line in American sports. Now, the color line in American sports, especially boxing, function as an informal racial divide shaped by cultural prejudices, individual champion choices, and promoter calculations of public sentiment and profitability. Distinct from former legislative bans, in the post-Civil War era, this segregation, of course, arose from white athletes' reluctance to risk defeats or reputational harm against Black competitors, compounded by audience dynamics in a society increasingly tolerant of Jim Crow customs. Promoters, attuned to these realities, favored matchups that maximized attendance before provoking backlash, as interracial events could deter ticket sales in segregated venues. Unlike team sports, later governed by league rules, boxing's decentralized structure allowed fighters and organizers to prioritize voluntary associations and economic viability over inclusive contention. It's Tom Mulliner, the one we was just talking about, that's 43 out of slavery. Pre-1900 records document sporadic interracial fights, such as Black American Tom Mulliner's 1810 and 1811 challenges against white English champion Tom Cridge, which tested notions of racial athletic superiority, but encountered overt crowd hostility, signaling broader societal resistance. By the 1880s, however, heavyweight divisions saw escalating avoidance. Black contender Peter Jackson secured wins over white fighters like Frank Slavin in 1890, yet faced repeated denials for title opportunities due to anticipated financial fallout from public uproar. These patterns stemmed from causal incentives, where promoters weighed gate receipts often relied on white majority crowds against the disruptions of cross-racial spectacle, leading to a de facto policy that preserved market stability amid rising racial animosities post-Reconstruction. Now there's John L. Sullivan. He was the champion during this period, and he was the last bare knuckles champion and the first glove champion. John L. Sullivan's heavyweight reign from 1882 to 1892 crystallized this exclusion as he openly rejected black challengers, stating in 1892, "I will not fight a Negro. I never have and never will." This declaration aligned with his persona as a symbol of white ethnic pride, but it also mirrored pragmatic assessment in a sport where champions curated opponents to safeguard purses and legacies. Eschewing fights deemed too risky for victory or revenue. Sullivan's approach, while rooted in personal bias, underscored boxing's first principles operation as a contractual pursuit, where participants negotiated terms based on mutual risk-reward, inadvertently sustaining segregation until external pressures later intervened. Okay, so now let's talk some more about the white champions' refusals and market reality. The white champions' refusals and market realities. That's Jack Johnson and Tommy Burns again when he did get his shot. James J. Corbett, heavyweight champion from September 7th, 1892 to March 17th, 1897, declined to risk his title against Peter Jackson, a leading black contender, whose professional record spanned 78 fights from 1882 to 1899, featuring a knockout ratio exceeding 70% and victories over top opponents, including George Godfrey for the Australian heavyweight title in 1886. Despite Jackson's demonstrated skill, highlighted by a 61-round exhibition draw with Corbett himself on May 21st, 1891 in Benicia, California, which ended without a victor due to exhaustion and fading light, Corbett prioritized fights yielding higher commercial returns, such as his title defense against Bob Fitzsimmons in 1897. Avoiding the potential backlash and reduced gate receipts from a loss to a black fighter. This choice reflected personal risk assessment amid market dynamics, where prevailing audience preferences for white supremacy narratives sustained champions' earnings. Interracial exhibitions like Corbett Jackson occurred, but really escalated to title stakes, underscoring selective engagement driven by profit over obligation. Yet he fought Jackson in an exhibition fight and it ended in a draw, 61 rounds, but he would not give him a title shot under the risk of losing, okay? Tommy Burns, who claimed the heavyweight title by defeating Marvin Hart on February 23rd, 1906, and held it until December 26, 1908, similarly showed initial reluctance to face Jack Johnson, a black fighter, opting instead for defenses against white contenders such as Bill Squires to maintain lucrative opportunities in North America and Europe. Burns' hesitation stemmed from Johnson's physical advantages, greater height, reach, and durability, coupled with the economic peril of defeat to him, as the black champion could provoke public boycotts and diminish promotional appeal in an era when racial hierarchies bolstered boxing's commercial viability. Only after persistent pursuit and a lucrative offer in Sydney, Australia, far from the United States scrutiny, did Burns agree to the matchup, resulting in his 14th round stoppage loss, illustrating how financial incentives eventually overrode caution when domestic markets proved inaccessible. These refusals aligned with broader patterns of self-interested decision making among white champions, where the threat of defeat by skilled black boxers like Jackson, who amassed wins against diverse international foes, risked not just the belt, but future purses tied to fan expectations of racial dominance. Yes, you didn't want to take a chance on losing to a black fighter. You might not get the white fans to come to no more of your fights after that, right? So contemporaneous evidence, including Corbett's post-title pursuits of theater and coaching ventures, indicates calculations favored preserving market value over merit-based challenges. Though sporadic interracial fights demonstrated feasibility absent title implications, such dynamics prioritize individual agency and revenue realities over any coordinated exclusion, as champions navigated a sport where black contenders' excellence coexisted with barriers erected by perceived social and financial costs. Okay, so let's look at the establishment and the early development of this title. Establishment and the early development of the colored heavyweight title. Now, the origins were in the late 19th century, late 1800s, 19th century. In the late 19th century, racial segregation in professional boxing, enforced by the unwritten color line, barred black heavyweights from contending for the world title, prompting black American fighters to establish informal parallel competitions among themselves to showcase talent and build skills. This exclusion, rooted in white champions' refusals to face black opponents, despite evident prowess, created a void filled by fights dating back to at least 1876, where black heavyweights, like those in early transatlantic fights, honed techniques in segregated rings, fostering a concentrated talent pool that elevated overall proficiency. That's Harry Wills up there too. No, that's Joe Jeanette on the screen. A pivotal early figure was George Godfrey, who claimed the inaugural informal World Colored Heavyweight Championship on February 23rd, 1883, by knocking out Charles Hadley in the 6th round during his 9th professional fight in Boston. So the first holder of the World Colored Heavyweight Championship was George Godfrey. Okay? Godfrey, known as Old Chocolate, defended this recognition sporadically until his loss to Peter Jackson on August 24th, 1888 in San Francisco, California, maintaining a record of dominance in black heavyweight circles amid limited opportunities against white fighters. These fights, often held in informal settings like saloons or touring exhibitions, emphasized endurance and strategy, compensating for the lack of mainstream promoting bodies. By the 1890s, figures like Frank Childs emerged to sustain these parallel defenses, claiming a colored heavyweight crown around 1897, after victories over contenders such as Bob Armstrong, whom he knocked out in the 2nd round on March 4th, 1899 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Child's crafty style and multiple defenses against black rivals underscored how segregation inadvertently pooled top black talent, producing boxers like Peter Jackson, who outclassed white heavyweights in exhibitions. Again, like the 61-round draw with James J. Corbett in 1891, demonstrating superior speed, reach, and footwork, despite barred title shots. This era's informal lineage laid groundwork for formalized recognition, prioritizing verifiable ring achievements over external validation. Okay, so then the World Colored Heavyweight title was formally recognized around 1903. Let's talk about the formal recognition of it. It started around 1876, but it didn't become a formal official title until around 1903. That's the great Sam McVey right there. We're going to talk about him, all these black pioneers tomorrow in deep, but that's Sam McVey right there. Him and Joe Jeanette for the brutal 46-round fight in Paris around 1909. I mean, we're going to that's probably will be the fight of the day tomorrow. Joe Jeanette and Sam McVey. Okay, the formal recognition around 1903 for the World Colored Heavyweight title. The World Colored Heavyweight Championship achieved formal recognition on February 3rd, 1903, when Jack Johnson defeated Denver Ed Martin by unanimous points decision over 20 rounds in Los Angeles, California, with the fight sanctioned by promoters as the contest for the title among black heavyweights. Yeah, that's when the promoters and everybody started getting involved in it then. Because before, remember, they were in little small venues, no kind of promotion or anything. But 1903 started being promoted and everything then. That was the formal recognition, February 1903. This outcome marked a shift from prior ad hoc claims, such as those by fighters like Klondike John Haynes, who had self-proclaimed the black heavyweight crown after early victories, but lacked broad promoter endorsement. Johnson's win was promptly validated by black American newspapers and boxing promoters, who viewed it as the de facto premier division for excluded black contenders, amid the rigid color line enforced by white athletic associations. So just weeks later, after the formal recognition of it, after that fight, on February 26, 1903, Johnson defended the championship against the undefeated Sam McVey in another points decision victory, underscoring the title's emerging structure of scheduled defenses rather than sporadic challenges. He defended it just 2 weeks later against Sam McVey on the screen there. These early fights, under glove rules, aligning with the broader adoption of the Marquis of Queensberry standards, replaced lingering bare knuckle elements from the late 19th century, enabling verifiable records and promoter oversight. The recognition reflected pragmatic adaptation to market exclusion, as black boxers generated dedicated audiences and purses through parallel competitions, with Johnson's defenses against top peers like McVey and Joe Jeanette, affirming the title's competitive integrity within segregated parameters. Now let's look at some of the major champions and eras. Some of the major champions that held it. Of course, there's Jack Johnson, probably the most famous person that held it. Jack Johnson's dominance and transition. Jack Johnson secured the World Colored Heavyweight Championship on February 3rd, 1903, defeating Denver Ed Martin by points decision after 20 rounds at Hazard's Pavilion in Los Angeles, California. As this victory marked Johnson's ascension in the segregated boxing landscape, where white heavyweights refused interracial fights, confining elite black fighters, again, to parallel competitions. From 1903 to 1908, Johnson defended the title successfully at least 17 times against top black contenders, including Sam Langford in 1906, and multiple fights with Joe Jeanette, showcasing his superior ring intelligence, stamina, and counterpunching that neutralized aggressive opponents. Johnson's undefeated streak during this period, maintaining a professional record without losses in heavyweight contests, demonstrated the depth of black boxing talent and elevated the color championship status as a rigorous test of skill and amid systemic exclusion from the white-held world title. So yeah, this was a very, very important title because it demonstrated that the black boxers had skills too. You know, they had some very, very, very top-level fights against each other. Johnson's reign underscored the championship's role in fostering competitive excellence despite racial barriers, with its tactical mastery, drawing crowds and highlighting boxers who might otherwise have been overlooked. Upon defeating Tommy Burns on December 26, 1908, to claim the undisputed world heavyweight crown in Sydney, Australia, Johnson relinquished the colored title, transitioning the focus to integrated contention and effectively vacating the segregated division he had dominated. So now the black fighters say, oh yeah, Jack Johnson got the regular title, we're going to get our shot now. That's what they thought, okay? So post-Johnson defenders, Sam Langford, Harry Wills, and others. This is post-Johnson, after Johnson got the regular title. So let's talk about the world colored heavyweight title after Jack Johnson now. Okay? Okay, excuse me for 1 minute. I had to wet my whistle. Okay, let's go. Post-Johnson, world colored heavyweight title post-Jack Johnson. Following Jack Johnson's ascension to the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship, the regular title, on December 26, 1908, he vacated the World Colored Heavyweight title, which had been established as a parallel crown for black boxers amid the prevailing color line that barred them from contending for the white-held world title. The title was initially claimed by Sam McVeigh over Joe Jeanette after Johnson vacated it, with Jeanette later recognized as champion after McCabe's vacated in 1910. Yeah, that's the fight we're going to talk about tomorrow, when Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh fought after Johnson vacated. That was in Paris, 47 round, brutal fight, okay? But after that, Johnson vacated it. Sam McVeigh beat Joe Jeanette for it. And Jeanette was later recognized as champion after McVeigh vacated it in 1910, amid disputes. Okay? Sam Langford, a Boston-based fighter, standing 5 feet 7 inches tall, yet competing effectively from lightweight to heavyweight, emerged as a dominant figure through victories over top contenders like Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh in fights during 1909 and 1910 and beyond. Langford's record included approximately 179 wins, 127 by knockout, across more than 240 professional fights from 1902 to 1926, many against larger opponents, demonstrating his versatility and power despite chronic weight disadvantages that forced him into mismatches across divisions from lightweight to heavyweight. And the man had been blind in one eye, and by 1926, he was legally blind in both eyes and was still fighting and still winning. Okay? Yes. Legally blind in both eyes by the end of his career. They stopped giving him licenses. They was like, come on, Sam. We can't give you no more boxing licenses. But he fought all the way to 1926. Okay? From lightweight to heavyweight. Okay? So Langford defended claims to the colored world title multiple times in the 1910s, including a notable 1914 rematch with Harry Wills that underscored the competitive depth among black heavyweights, though he lost a recognized championship fight to Wills on points in a 10-round decision on September 29, 1919. Now, they fought officially 18 times, and they said they fought 22 times, Langford and Wills. Okay. Despite his dominance, evidenced by knockouts of future Hall of Famers like Harry Greb and Jeff Smith in lower weights. Langford was repeatedly denied heavyweight title shots by white champions, including Jack Johnson himself, who refused the rematch after their April 26, 1906 encounter, where Johnson won a 15-round decision while outweighing Langford by over 30 pounds. That was for the colored heavyweight championship. This pattern of evasion highlighted the economic and racial barriers as promoters and champions avoided fights that risked integrating the division or drawing scrutiny to black excellence. Harry Wills, dubbed the Black Panther, succeeded as a primary title holder in the 1920s, securing the colored championship 3 times through key wins, including a 1916 decision over champion Joe Jeanette and his 1919 conquest of Langford. Standing 6 feet 2 inches and weighing around 210 to 220 pounds, Wills amassed roughly 131 victories, about 50 by knockout, against elite opposition, positioning him as a legitimate threat to white heavyweight king Jack Dempsey. Wills petitioned for a Dempsey matchup over 50 times between 1920 and 1926, offering the fight for minimal purses to bypass the color line. But Dempsey's camp cited training risks and public backlash, effectively upholding segregation, while Wills maintained the colored title by defenses against contenders like Floyd Johnson. These denials preserved market control for white boxers, but stifled Wills' career peak, forcing him into exhibitions and lesser fights that diluted his legacy, despite empirical evidence of his punching prowess and stamina. And what big thing that stopped the Wills-Dempsey fight was the United States government, because when Jack Johnson beat James Jeffries in 1908 or 1910, they had race riots all across the country. Over 100 people were injured and 20 people lost their lives. So the government gave instructions to the promoters not to make an interracial heavyweight fight. That's what stopped the Dempsey-Wills fight, because Jack Dempsey really did try to fight Harry Wills, and they had contracts signed twice. But then they couldn't find a venue that would accept the fight, because they had orders from the government not to make it. So that's what really stopped it, was the United States government, because Jack Dempsey wanted to fight. He didn't really duck anybody, okay? Jack Dempsey didn't. Okay, interwar period and sustained competition. Look at the title after. The interwar period and sustained competition there. Yeah, that's Joe Jeanette up there now. That's, I'll tell you in a minute who that is, because I don't know. Okay, interwar period and sustained competition. Now, in the 1920s, the World Colored Heavyweight Championship transitioned through contenders who maintained active defenses within segregated black boxing networks amid ongoing racial barriers that prevented unified title challenges against white champions like Jack Dempsey, George Godfrey II. That's George Godfrey right there, yeah. George Godfrey II, a Philadelphia-based heavyweight known for his elusive style. He captured the title on November 8, 1926, by stopping Larry Gaines by a technical knockout in the 6th round at Broadway Auditorium in Buffalo, New York. This victory marked Godfrey's claim amid a series of fights that kept the division competitive, as he compiled over 30 fights between 1926 and 1928 against notable opponents, including Monty Munn and Paulino Oscar Dunn, though many were non-title affairs. Those were white fighters, okay? And if they had the regular heavyweight championship, it would be in the contract that it's not a title fight, okay? But Godfrey still held the colored heavyweight title. Competition intensified with Larry Gaines, a Canadian black boxer who twice held recognition as a colored champion, regaining the title from Godfrey on August 15, 1928 at Maple Leaf Stadium in Toronto, Ontario, when Godfrey was disqualified in the third round for delivering a low blow that dented Gaines' protective cut. Gaines defended the championship in regional circuits, facing economic constraints of the era, yet sustaining fights that honed skills for black heavyweights excluded from mainstream promotions. Godfrey, undeterred, continued as a top contender into the early 1930s, engaging in high-profile exhibitions such as the July 31st, 1931 appearance at Boyd Field in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where his status as a colored champion drew crowds despite uncertain title alignments at the time. These defenses, occurring against the backdrop of the Great Depression, underscored the title's role in preserving a parallel boxing economy for black athletes, producing battle-tested fighters who demonstrated prowess in over a dozen documented colored title-related fights during the decade. By the early 1930s, mounting interracial exhibitions and black boxers' performances in open fights exerted gradual pressure toward integration, eroding the necessity of segregated titles while highlighting the colored championship's function in talent cultivation. All right, so now the decline of the title and integration. Let's look at the decline of the colored heavyweight title and integration. Know who that is? The Brown Bomber. Joe Louis's breakthrough. The drunk Mike Mazik and the drunk Irishman in the building. Salute. This is Black Boxing History Week in the midst of Black History Month. Okay? But Mike Mazik and the drunk Irishman, salute. So yeah, we've been talking about the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Ultimate title because black fighters weren't allowed to fight for the regular title. So now we're up into the 1930s. And here comes Joe Louis. So now this is the decline and the end of the World Colored Heavyweight Championship because Joe Louis was so good and everybody saw a dollar sign and they let him fight for it. You know? So let's take a look at the decline of integration of title fights. But salute Mike Mazik and Drunk Irishman in the building. All right. Decline and integration. And there's Joe Louis up there. Joe Louis's breakthrough. Joe Louis, turning professional on July 4th, 1934, quickly established dominance in the heavyweight division through a string of knockouts against both black and white opponents, positioning him as the informal leading colored heavyweight by 1935. Unlike predecessors confined to segregated fights, Louis's technical superiority, combining exceptional punching power, speed, and defensive skills, enabled him to secure high-profile victories over white contenders, bypassing traditional color line refusals. I told you they saw Joe Louis and said, forget that color line. Everybody saw dollar signs, I'm telling you. Let that boy fight for it. So yeah, he bypassed the traditional color line refusals. His knockout of former world champion Primo Carnera on June 25th, 1935, followed by a fourth-round stoppage of ex-champion Max Baer on September 24th, 1935, demonstrated empirical prowess that prior black fighters like Harry Wills lacked against comparable opposition, where mismatches or denials had stalled progress. Yeah, Joe Louis came in until he beat the previous 5 champions that preceded him. Okay? Now, these triumphs elevated Joe Louis to the top contender status, rendering the World Colored Heavyweight Championship obsolete, as promoters and champions could no longer justify avoiding him on racial grounds. Louis's undefeated record of 26 wins, no losses, the majority by knockout, by mid-1936, underscored causal factors rooted in individual merit over shifting social attitudes, compelling the boxing establishment to integrate him into unified title contention. By 1937, colored title defenses had effectively ceased, with no recognized fights post-Lewis's rise, as its dominance accelerated the decline of segregated divisions. On June 22nd, 1937, Joe Louis captured the undisputed world heavyweight title by knocking out James J. Braddock in the 8th round at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois, becoming the second black champion ever after Jack Johnson's 1915 loss. This breakthrough marked the colored title's terminal official ending, with integration solidified under Lewis's reign and no further need for parallel black-only championships. But it was a 22-year reign from when Jack Johnson lost it to when Joe Louis got it, 1915 to 1937. No black fighter fought for the heavyweight championship in between that time. Okay, so let's look at the final defenses and abolition in 1937. Final defenses and the abolition of the colored heavyweight title in 1937. Okay. Is that Sam Lightfoot again? I believe. No. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, final defenses and abolition by 1937. The World Colored Heavyweight Championship experienced a rapid decline in the mid-1930s as racial barriers in heavyweight boxing began to erode, with no recorded unified defenses after roughly 1935. Boxing archives indicate that contenders like George Godfrey, who had previously held the title in fights such as his 1927 win over Charles Hadley, faded from contention without further recognized challenges, reflecting a shift toward integrated opportunities. By 1936-1937, sporadic claims emerged among lesser-known fighters, but these lacked broad sanction or unification, as top black heavyweights pursued the undivided world title amid changing market dynamics. For instance, while figures like Kingfish Levinsky engaged in high-profile heavyweight fights during this period, such as his 1935 loss to Joe Louis, no credible sources affirmed Levinsky's involvement in colored championship defenses, underscoring the title's fragmentation and irrelevance by that point. The championship's empirical end came on June 22nd, 1937, again when Joe Louis defeated James J. Braddock to claim the World Heavyweight Championship, obviating the need for a parallel segregated title. Historical analysis confirmed that Lewis's victory integrated black boxers into the premier division, rendering the colored championship extinct without formal abolition, as evidenced by the absence of subsequent defenses in comprehensive records. Significance and controversies now. Take a look back at it. I don't know who that was. That's Sam Lightfoot right there. Okay, but significance and controversies. Mike Mazik, salute. Oh, Mike Mazik. Salute, Mike Mazik. How are you? Drunk Irishman. How's everybody today? Achievements in black boxing talent development. The World Colored Heavyweight Championship provided a structured, competitive framework for black boxers excluded from the white-held world title, fostering rigorous skill development through frequent high-stakes fights among top talents. This environment produced multiple International Boxing Hall of Fame inductees, including Sam Lightfoot, who captured the colored title a record 5 times between 1910 and 1918, and amassed over 167 wins across weight classes, demonstrating exceptional punching power and agility against diverse opponents. Langford's versatility, fighting effectively from lightweight to heavyweight, exemplified how the title's demands sharpened technical proficiency and endurance, enabling fighters to excel even in limited interracial matchups, such as his fifth-round knockout of white light heavyweight champion Philadelphia Jack O'Brien in 1911. Empirical outcomes underscore the championship's role in incubating elite ability, paralleling the Negro League's success in baseball by creating a merit-based boxing proving ground that yielded fighters with superior records against white opponents in exhibitions and non-title fights. For instance, colored champions like Langford compiled wins over white contenders, including Stanley Ketchel and fireman Jim Flynn, contributing to career records where knockouts comprised over 70% of victories, reflecting honed offensive capabilities absent in less competitive outings. Post-integration data further supports this, as black heavyweights who emerged from such segregated circuits claimed the majority of world titles after Joe Louis's breakthrough on June 22, 1937, including extended reigns by Muhammad Ali, 1964-1967, 1974-1978, and Larry Holmes, 1978-1985, indicating that the prior era's intense internal rivalries built a talent pool capable of numerical dominance in open competition. But we got to admit that American heavyweight nowadays, the cupboard is bare. The cupboard is very bare in 2026. Yeah. But we got some young ones coming, so we'll see. This talent incubation countered exclusionary barriers by prioritizing performance-driven excellence, as black heavyweights not only filled but outperformed available opposition with figures like Harry Wills, another colored title holder with a professional record of 75 wins, including 47 knockouts before integration, often against white sparring partners and journeymen. Such achievements highlight causal links between sustained rivalry and superior athletic output, independent of broader societal integration timelines. Now, there was some criticisms of segregated titles. Let's look at that. There's the Black Panther, Harry Wills. Nope, that's the Boston Bone Crusher. There he is. Okay, criticisms of segregated titles. Look at some of the negatives of it. The establishment of the World Colored Heavyweight Championship effectively codified racial segregation in heavyweight boxing, creating a secondary tier that barred black fighters from contending for the undisputed world title, regardless of their records or skill levels, thus undermining a merit-based hierarchy in the sport. This structure, imposed by white-controlled boxing authorities and champions who enforced the color line against interracial heavyweight fights, channeled top black talent into isolated competition rather than allowing direct challenges to white title holders. A prominent example is Harry Wills, who captured the colored title in 1923 and compiled over 60 wins, including wins against ranked opponents, yet was systematically denied a shot at world champion Jack Dempsey, despite repeated negotiations and public pressure from 1916 onward. Dempsey himself later confirmed that refusal stemmed from Wills' race, aligning with precedents set by prior white champions, who avoided black opponents to preserve the color bar. This exclusion exemplified how segregated titles precluded unified meritocracy, forcing skilled fighters like Wills, whose career spanned 1911 to 1932, without a world title opportunity, to defend a racially delimited crown instead. Economically, the segregated system curtailed black heavyweights' access to lucrative unified title fights, which drew far larger audiences and purses than intra-community fights. For context, pre-integration heavyweight clashes often generated gate revenues in the hundreds of thousands, while colored title defenses remained confined to smaller, segregated venues with diminished commercial appeal. Critics argue this not only perpetuated division by normalizing parallel championships, but also delayed broader integration, as black stars proving dominance in segregated fights failed to force open the main division until external pressures mounted. While some black promoters pragmatically supported the colored title to foster intraracial competition and sustain professional viability amid total exclusion, the framework ultimately reinforced gatekeeper-imposed barriers rather than eroding them. Alternative viewpoints on necessity and merit. Crush. Oh, I thought that was Crush. My bad. Shabazz. Salute Shabazz. Alternative viewpoints on necessity and merit. Winding down now. We're going to get some link time in a few minutes, too. Now, some boxing historians contend that the World Colored Heavyweight Championship served as a meritocratic outlet for black talent, compensating for white heavyweights' persistent refusal to cross the color line and enabling rigorous competition that built exceptional skills. Mark Allen Baker, in his analysis of the title's history, portrays it as a leverage mechanism or tool to counter racism that showcased some of the finest pugilists the sport has ever known, allowing black fighters to sustain active careers through frequent fights against elite peers when integrated opportunities were denied. This perspective highlights voluntary participation by black boxers and promoters who organize events independently, fostering agency and elevating the title's prestige as a de facto pinnacle within constrained circumstances. Now, proponents of this view argue that the championship's necessity stemmed from the private nature of boxing promotions, where white champions and organizers exercise rights to select opponents freely, without legal prevailing racial norms. Such refusals exemplified by figures like James J. Jeffries, avoiding black contenders post-1903, underscored causal realities of association preferences rather than state-enforced segregation in private fights, prompting black fighters to create their own competitive hierarchy based on performance merit. Okay, so let's look at modern recognition. Final thing, modern recognition of this colored heavyweight title. Modern recognition. Historical reassessments. In 2020, boxing historian Mark Allen Baker, that's him right there, published the World Colored Heavyweight Championship, 1876 to 1937. This was a comprehensive study documenting the title's evolution over 61 years and profiling the 28 professional athletes recognized as champions based on contemporary fight records and claims. Baker's work draws on primary sources such as period newspapers and fight outcomes to trace the championship's informal lineage, emphasizing its role as a parallel structure necessitated by the colored line that barred black boxers from contending for the world heavyweight crown until Jack Johnson's tenure. Boxing database BoxRec maintains a verified compilation of the title's holders, confirming Baker's core sequence through 33 reigns, accounting for repeat champions, 28 overall. some of them had it 2 or 3. I think Sam Langford had it like 5 times. And this was derived from documented victories with key transitions like George Godfrey's 1883 knockout of Charles Hadley, marking an early establishment phase. Yeah, George Godfrey was the first champion to hold it. And proposed WBC commemorative title. Okay. Yeah, let's take a look at that. In the 21st century, discussions within boxing organizations and historiography have included proposals for the World Boxing Council, WBC, to issue a commemorative title honoring the World Colors Heavyweight Championship lineage, primarily as a symbolic acknowledgement of its role in showcasing Black heavyweight talent during segregation. These suggestions, often raised in enthusiast forums and historical analysis, envision a non-competitive belt to integrate the era's champions into modern records without reviving divided competitions. However, as of 2024, the WBC had not formalized or implemented such a commemorative title for the division itself. Instead, the WBC has pursued individual historical recognitions tied to the colored championship. For instance, the organization has prominently featured Sam Langford, a multiple-time colored heavyweight title champion from 1903 to 1918, and widely regarded as one of boxing's greatest fighters, as the greatest boxer to never win a world title, emphasizing his denied opportunities due to racial exclusion. Reports from 2020 indicate the WBC designated Langford an honorary world champion on August 13th, acknowledging his mastery across weight classes despite barriers to the unified heavyweight crown. This approach prioritized retrospective honors for key figures over a dedicated divisional belt, aligning with broader efforts to document pre-integration achievements without controversy over past racial separations. Okay, and then finally, let's look at some of the champions, some of the men that held this great title. Okay, list of champions. The following list is the recognized world colors heavyweight champions with 28 reigns by 18 men. Charles C. Smith, 1876. Morris Grant. Charles Hadley. George Godfrey. Peter Jackson. Bob Armstrong. Frank Charles. George Flyers. Frank Charles. Ed Martin. Jack Johnson, 1903. That's when it was officially recognized as an official title, 1903, when Jack Johnson won it. Sam McVeigh. Joe Jeanette. Sam Lightfoot. Harry Wills, Bill Tate, George Godfrey II, Larry Gaines, and Obie Walker. All right, there you have it, the World Colors Heavyweight Championship. Okay, let's get some link time. I had a thing on Ike Williams too, but let's put the link in there. Anybody want to chop it up or give some thoughts on anything in the last 30 minutes? I always say that, and then it'd be like 7 o'clock. We'd still be on here. We appreciate everybody that came through today. Hope you enjoyed that. This is Black Boxing History Week. Okay, tomorrow we're going to look at some black boxing pioneers. Some of these names we mentioned in here today will be on there tomorrow. About 8 to 10, I'm little brief talks about each and move on. Yep, that's Friday at Profile Day. Okay, I was putting the link in, right? forgot. Looking forward to next weekend. Who y'all got, Ryan Garcia or Mario Barrios? Okay, let me see. Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's the link. And then we had Ike Williams, too. His biggest opponent was the Mob. There's a shot of Ike. Yeah, Ike Williams. Lightweight great Ike Williams. Toughest opponent was the Mob. Toughest opponent was the Mob. Because the Mob ran boxing back then. It wasn't no thing like Ohio run boxing or the Chicago run boxing or Texas run boxing or California run boxing. The Mob ran boxing. And there was no argument, wasn't even arguable. Okay? If they couldn't get the fighter, they already had the judges, so you couldn't win. They told Ike, I don't care if you throw a shutout. You don't go by an instructor, you ain't winning. And he dominated the fight and he didn't win. They told him, we already got the judges. So take the money and the die, but Ike said no. But he did eventually become champion. Let's talk about it. Ike Williams, in a minute. Oh, shoot. Yeah, I was looking at something. Okay, yeah. Lightweight great. Ike gonna be in the fight of the day tomorrow against Bojack. Not Bo Mack, Bojack. Fighter back around the 40s, 50s. Yeah. Ike Williams' toughest opponent was the Mob, though. Bert Sugar said about Ike Williams, he was so slick. He could have played the piano with boxing gloves on. Okay? The legendary Bert Sugar. Ike was more than a world-class fighter. He was a mythic. Ike was quite simply, with apologies to Benny Leonard, Henry Armstrong, Lou Jenkins, Bojack, Jimmy Carter, Bob Montgomery, and even Roberto Duran, the best lightweight fighter who ever lived. Historian Bill Kelly. Wow, that's some big words over Roberto Duran. Unfortunately, Ike Williams' heyday from 1940 to 1955 coincided with an era when the Mob had their hooks in the countless fighters. And to advance one's career, the wise guys often demanded a significant cut of the action. Nevertheless, Ike Williams could hold his head up high for never yielding to the temptations of throwing a fight. Yeah, never did. Standing 5'9", Isaiah Ike Williams was a natural lightweight, but often fought opponents well above 135. It was an era when fighters routinely fought in different weight classes. Yeah, moved up and down, up and down. Ike got matched with tough opposition from his pro debut at only 17 years old, yet still managed to win 13 of his first 18 fights between March 1940 and November 1941, with 2 losses being quickly avenged. His January 1943 debut at Madison Square Garden was a decision over Jerry Moore. During all of 1942 and 1943, Williams notched a perfect 34-win streak, 16 by the knockout route. It established Ike as one of the most dominant boxers around at that time. Then he hit a roadblock on his first fight of 1944 when he got pounded into submission and fell 3 times in the 12th round to Bob Montgomery before the referee halted proceedings. Williams used it as a learning experience and continued with his winning ways on 16 different occasions in 1944, with the only blemish being a split decision loss to the gazelle-like Willie Joyce. Yeah, Ike Williams, Bojack, Bob Montgomery had a series of fights in the 40s. Excellent round robin. You want to watch some good fights from the 1940s? Any combination of Ike Williams versus Bob Montgomery versus Bojack versus Ike Williams. Any combination of them 3. All great fights. There's like 5 or 6 of them all together between those 3. Yeah. Now, Ike Williams won the world lightweight title in 1945 and did it the hard way, entering the champion's home turf of Mexico City and beating Juan Zurita. Zurita at the time had 130 wins, 22 losses, and 1 draw. And Ike went down there in Mexico and beat him by a second round TKO. Man had 153 fights, okay? That was Ike's first title. Ike performed the feat at only 21 years old, making him one of the youngest boxers to ever win a world title. 2 1946 title matches saw Williams vanquishing Enrique Bolaños by 4th round TKO at Wrigley Field, while later that year he traveled to Cardiff, Wales, and knocked out the highly experienced Ronnie James. Ronnie James had 131 fights at that time, okay? And Ike knocked him down 7 times and stopped him in the 9th. Knocked him down 7 times and stopped him in the 9th round, okay? Ike would fight 20 times in 1946 and 47 and packed all the top boxing palaces and arenas right across the land. A testament to his drawing power, Ike gave the fans tremendous action and usually managed to win without the judges taking matters into their hands. Okay, Ike took him into his own hands. Ike's reign as lightweight champion would be one of the longest in boxing history. Okay, one of the longest in boxing history. There's Ike right there and Bob Montgomery. Ike on the right, throwing the punch. Yeah, that's Ike and Bob Montgomery. 1947 marked the pinnacle of Ike's career as he avenged that humiliating 1944 loss to Bob Montgomery while unifying the lightweight crown at Philadelphia's Municipal Stadium. Montgomery was knocked down for a 9 count in the 6th round, and the referee soon stepped in to halt the action. Montgomery, often ranked as one of the top 5 lightweights in history, had captured the New York State Athletic Commission version of the lightweight crown on 3 different occasions between 1943 and 1947. And that was one of his tough opponents, Bob Montgomery. 1948 marks the year which firmly established Ike as an all-time great. He vanquished the cream of the opposition: Bojack, Kid Gavilan, Enrique Bolaños, Freddie Dawson, Jesse Flores, Vince Turpin, Livio Manelli, Rudy Cruz, and Buddy Garcia. Yeah, cream of the crop down at lightweight, welterweight, featherweight, 1940s, because it was still mainly the original 8 then. Cream of the crop, them names right there. Ike beat them all. Bojack, Kid Gavilan, Enrique Bolaños, Freddie Dawson, Jesse Flores, Vince Turpin, Livio Manelli, Rudy Cruz, and Buddy Garcia. Ike's scraps were always action-packed, which made him a fan favorite. One of the most skilled pugilists ever, Ike's punching power was devastating. Lightweight. He was named both the Ring Magazine and the Boxing Writers Association of America Fighter of the Year for 1948. In 1949, Ike fought monthly and got the victory except for 2 extremely close losses in non-title fights at Madison Square Garden to the legendary Kid Gavilan. Both fights Ike fought at 136 pounds, 10 less than Gavilan, who was a natural welterweight. Yeah, Ike went up to welterweight from lightweight, but guess what? He only went up 1 pound. he was 135 fighter, but he went to welterweight, still coming into the fights weighing 136 against natural welterweights. This something. He went to welterweight for 135, but he only went up 1 pound. Crazy. On July 21st, 1949, with Jack Dempsey as the referee and many Hollywood stars gathered ringside, Ike was offered big loot to throw the first Gavilan fight, but declined. This is what I was telling y'all about. Tellingly, he got robbed of the decision, according to many ringside onlookers, including Sugar Ray Robinson. Yeah, that was the one where the mob wanted Ike to throw the fight. They was going to pay him to throw it. And Ike said no, so the mob told him, well, you're still not going to win because we got the judges then. Right? So, yeah, that's what happened. Ike wouldn't throw the fight, and he got robbed. Sugar Ray Robinson was there. Sugar Ray Robinson agreed that Ike got robbed that night. Yeah, the mob had a stranglehold on it, though. Ike produced one of his finest performances by knocking out former foe Enrique Bolanos in 4 rounds in July 1949 at Wrigley Field. A year earlier, Ike allowed Bolanos to hang around for the full 15 rounds. The fight grapevine also mentioned Ike's fight against Johnny Bratton as one he was intended to tank, but ignored the offer and went on to win a unanimous 15-round decision. He ignored the offers and got the decision that time. Wow. 2 close points losses in late 1950 heralded a slow decline in Ike's fortunes, albeit he still faced the best fighters in both the lightweight and welterweight divisions. Gil Turner and Chuck Davey, both undefeated at the time Ike fought them. Carmen Basilio, Don Williams, and Jimmy Carter, against whom Ike lost the title by 14th round TKO in May 1951 at Madison Square Garden. The title loss was portended when Ike barely outpointed Fritzy Pruden in April 1951 at Chicago Stadium in a welterweight fight. 2 months earlier, the Canadian pugilist had established his credentials with an upset points win over the highly regarded Tony Gennaro at Madison Square Garden. After 1953, Ike Williams would only fight 3 more times, with the last 2 fights being against Bojack. It's noteworthy that when Williams caused Bojack to retire atop his stool after 8 rounds in August 1955, it marked the final fight of both fighters' careers. Final fight of both men's careers, yep. The second of those 4 Bojack Ike Williams fights will always be remembered for that dramatic moment when, as punch after punch thudded into the unprotected jaw of Bojack while driving him into a corner, Williams turned to the referee for a merciful stop to what had become a one-sided affair. The referee did eventually intervene, although he had his hard as nails. Bojack would have continued enduring the onslaught, but the referee did let it go on too long, way too long. This combination of ferocity and passion had turned Williams into a natural crowd pleaser and fan favorite. Here's how the wise guys got their chance to bleed Williams dry. By 1946, Ike's manager, Connie McCarthy's chronic alcoholism made him a pariah that could no longer be tolerated. Ike wanted to self-manage, but the Managers Guild put the kibosh on that idea. Ike faced the dire prospect of being blacklisted from the game. That's when notorious mafia godfather Frankie Carbo signed Williams to one of his contracts, which included being overseen by understudy Blinky Palermo. Offers to throw fights were constantly rebuffed by Williams. Ike left boxing with a sparkling record of 127 wins, 24 losses, and 5 draws. That included 66 wins by knockout. Over his 16-year career, Ike fought at weights ranging from 131 to 154. In today's era, he would have been a multi-weight champion. Had Ike been born 25 years later, he would be far better known today and receive far better guidance. Yeah, for the Mafia era though. So with better guidance and management, Ike also would have been featured in many multi-million-dollar pay-per-views. But back in Ike's heyday, nobody was serious about looking into the shady side of a fight game where boxers were often treated like chattel. Ike Williams, yep, often treated like chattel. Yeah, okay, let's look at, finish it off, a quick look at boxing during slavery. What happened? I didn't hit my own link. Wow. Oh, come on. Bear with me for a second. I was trying to do something, but it ain't doing. Oh, why? It won't let me do it. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, one more moment. Bear with me for one more moment. Then we're going to talk about boxing during slavery briefly. Then we're going to get out of here. Okay. Hope everybody enjoyed the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Tomorrow is going to be some black boxing pioneers. Just some brief little talks about some fighters from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And their contributions to the sport. Some of the names we talked about today during the World Colored Heavyweight Championship, we're going to look at their careers briefly. Some of their fights, their records, that sort of thing. Okay? That's tomorrow. Oh, goodness. Get out of there. There we go. There we go. I did it. I want to take that link out. Don't hit it now because I can get out of here in like 10 minutes. It's gone. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, real quick. Boxing during slavery. Okay. Boxing during slavery. Okay, here we go. Hit the link, subscribe, all of that stuff. All right. It's just very brief. Okay, now, boxing during slavery in the United States was a brutal, coerced activity where slaveholders forced enslaved men to fight for entertainment, gambling, and to assert dominance over rival plantations. These fights, often called battle royal or mandingo fighting, served as a safety valve to curb rebellion, though some enslaved men like Tom Molyneux used it to secure their freedom. So you win your master a certain amount of money and his family, you could earn your freedom, okay? Now, slaveholders used boxing to keep enslaved people tired, preventing insurrection. It was also a source of amusement, prestige, and gambling profit for plantation owners. Battle royals, a common practice involving several blindfolded enslaved men placed in a ring to fight until only one remained. Resistance and survival. While a tool of oppression, some enslaved men turned it into a display of physical prowess and rarely a path to freedom. Again, Tom Molyneux. Perhaps the most famous example, Molyneux was an enslaved man in Virginia who won his freedom and $500 for his owner after winning a high-stakes fight. He later traveled to England in 1809 to compete as a professional. And more on Tom Molyneux, a lot more on Tom Molyneux tomorrow. Legacy. Boxing is considered one of the first integrated sports with roots in these plantation fights that laid the foundation for Black American participation in the sport. Despite the violent nature of these, they also provided a rare avenue for some to achieve fame, as seen with fighters like Molyneux and Bill Richmond, who we're going to touch on both tomorrow. Okay, so there you have it. Hope everybody enjoyed it. The colored heavyweight championship. We got Just Do Boxing next. We got BBO later tonight, 8 o'clock, Irony Boxing from the Cat Sports family. About Dinish, something like that tonight. Fire lineup coming up. Just Do Boxing in minutes at 4 p.m. in these YouTube streets. Cast Sports will be back tomorrow at 2. The Drunk Irishman, Mike Mazik, Azim Shabazz, BVO Sports TV, Thomas Hill, Mike Grimm, Technique, Prize Fighter, Just Do Boxing, Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody for stopping through today. Join me again tomorrow. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing is up next. This is Cat Sports, The Boxtorian. Everybody have a great afternoon. Appreciate y'all 1,000,000%.